the breakdown of forms which had obscured the formless. And this is the grace of the spiritual teaching. It saves suffering. It saves a lot of time too, because suffering implies time. Eventually you would get there through more suffering, but the suffering that you have had has been enough to get you here. Without it, you wouldn't have come. So it's worked. It's worked. Suffering works, no doubt. But it can take time before it really works. For a long time, suffering can lead to increasing egoic delusion, increasing contraction, increasing density. But a point is always reached when it becomes, when the auto-destruction happens, the density and the heaviness of it cannot sustain itself anymore and goes. It's like layers falling off. And then sometimes those beings who realized that, they looked back on their suffering and said, what a nightmare. And then they talked about it and realized how strongly it resembles a dream. All the suffering that they have been through, now that they are awake, what a nightmare that was. And so when they start teaching, they sometimes speak of the delusion of suffering, the unreality of it. From their position, from where they are, their realization, this is true. It may not be true when you are in the middle of it. Of course, you could make it into another belief. You go to a teacher and he says, all suffering is an illusion. You say, okay, I believe that. And then you carry on suffering and you say, it's an illusion, it's an illusion. But it's a pointer. Suffering is an illusion, is a pointer, and one day the little pointer may hit something. The planet is heavy with pain, human pain, in the energy field of the planet. A long time of creating pain out of that egoic delusion. Each human creating pain for themselves. A painful form identity. Not knowing who you are is suffering. Not knowing who you are beyond form is suffering. And so they created a whole world out of that state of consciousness, and they created a lot of pain out of that primary delusion, because that delusion flows into whatever you do and think and experience. This colored, distorted by that delusion. And sooner or later it always turns into pain. So humans have been in the collective energy field of the planet. There is an enormous heaviness, which is human pain. And every human carries part of that, in addition to the pain they've experienced in this form as children, residues of pain that people carry inside. Pain body, we call it, which is partly personal, so to speak. Ultimately, nothing is personal, it's nothing to do with who you are, but only in the sense that it comes from your childhood, your past of this form, residues left by suffering that you've gone through in this form. And a large part of it is the collective energy field, the collective pain that is in the human unconscious, the heaviness of that. And that, when I began to teach, I pointed out, when I began to understand this inner transformation that had happened to this form, I began to see that it's intimately connected with surrendering. It's intimately connected with the surrendered state that is totally aligned with now. And I began to teach that. And as, of course, that is the root cause of suffering is the state of non-surrender, which humans have been in for thousands and thousands of years. So I began to teach that there's no need to suffer anymore. And gradually I saw that even those who were able to totally surrender to now still experienced wave movements of pain in their lives, even though they were surrendering. And then I began to learn about the human pain body as I observed that and realized that every human carries his or her share of collective human pain. It's ultimately what the pain body is. It is the manifestation of human unconsciousness, and humans carry it in here, in the body. It is an emotional, an energy field that is not flowing, life energy that is stagnant, trapped, and manifests either as anger, or as great fear, or as the heaviness of depression. So it's an energy field of pain humans carry. Sometimes they don't even know it's there. It's dormant at times. And its life works beautifully. You surrender to now, and you might even think, that's it, I've come to the end of it. And then suddenly a little trigger happens. A little thing goes wrong, or even a little thought comes into your head that suddenly proliferates and becomes a trigger for an enormous influx of pain in whatever form: anger, fear, heaviness, sadness. Suddenly you're completely overtaken by that. And it flows into your mind. It energizes all the mind structures of the ego. It energizes and amplifies the story, all the identifications. And so the me, the self, the mind-made self, becomes extremely empowered through that. The delusion becomes empowered through that pain, human pain. And when you start thinking, all thoughts reflecting the energy field of the pain body. So the pain body has moved into your mind and is governing, controlling your thought processes and actually feeding on each thought. You strengthen the pain body through those thought processes, because each thought corresponds to the energy vibrational frequency of the pain body. If it's anger, it will be thoughts of anger. And that's how the pain body renews itself. And so the pain body becomes a self. It becomes, you identify with it as self. You think it's me. It is you, really. It possesses you, so to speak. And it feeds on other people. If it could speak openly, it doesn't say that openly. It wants to make somebody unhappy. And it wants somebody else to make me even more unhappy. And usually it succeeds. Because one active pain body during its active period, once it's fed on your mind and other people's reactions, it will subside, go back to the dormant period, the dormancy. But during the active period, it will feed on your mind and on people around you, and it will easily awaken other people's pain bodies if their pain body is at a stage of readiness to come out of the dormant state. And so one pain body can easily awaken several pain bodies in its vicinity. You can notice it in families, it sometimes happens at work, in your workplace, anywhere where people gather. A committee meeting, one heavy pain body in a committee meeting can awaken every other pain body that has been dormant in that committee, and you get big drama. And so it's wonderful to watch how it works. And if you go outside, if your pain body is active, and it may be active for an hour, it may be active for a whole day in some people, it could be active for several days, it varies a lot. For some people it's only a few minutes, but those tend to be people already becoming more conscious, so it cannot linger, it's recognized. Sometimes before it can really get hold of your mind. We'll come to that. But if you go outside and your pain body is active, you also attract other active pain bodies, because active pain bodies recognize each other. So if you then, any situation that you walk into with an active pain body, or you may be hiding it at that moment, it'll be in your mind, yes, it's active, it's using your mind, but you're smiling. And suddenly, somebody attacks you, verbally or in whatever way. And that was somebody whose pain body recognized yours and said, oh, here's food. And then you go away from that, and then you go around the corner, and it happens again. Somebody else attacks you. And the whole world seems to be hostile, because every pain body, unless they are totally dormant, in certain people. Maybe they've just gone through the active period and they just don't want any more pain. They haven't digested the pain yet. But every other pain body recognizes you. And they like to meet each other and feed on each other. And for some people, the pain body is associated also with the opposite sex. That's a strange thing that is not that uncommon. And that is but often the case when, not necessarily always, you've had a painful relationship with a parent. Then your relationship with a man or your relationship with a woman is associated with pain body. And it is not uncommon for people to choose their partner through their pain body, unconsciously of course. To choose, when you fall in love, quite often the pain body has a part in that. And this strong attraction you feel is partly the attraction through your pain body to somebody else's pain body who perfectly complements yours. And so you feel drawn to that person very strongly. And we all know people, perhaps even ourselves, who again and again are drawn to the same kind of person that creates the same kind of pain for them. And they're doing it again. And then they say, this time I'm not choosing a partner with a pain body anymore. I want somebody conscious. And so you choose somebody who practices meditation, who is a vegetarian. And surely he or she must be conscious. And maybe you forgot that Hitler was a vegetarian too. And then you start living together, and then you realize, oh, suddenly it's happening again. The same, I've fallen into the same, I've married the same man again. That's because the attraction was there through the pain body. So many marriages are like that. Made in, what's the expression? Made in heaven, something, marriage made in heaven, and this one is made in hell. So, pain bodies recognize each other. Pain bodies do not want to be recognized in themselves for what they are. They don't want the light of your attention on them. They want to flow into your mind, renew themselves through using your mind and using other people. They can only continue to renew themselves if you don't recognize them for what they are. If the recognition isn't there, each time you get overtaken totally, and immediately it's become self, it's become the me, an unhappy me. So to break that is simply to be alert enough, and of course you cannot make yourself be alert enough, that the alertness, the presence that is required to watch the pain body, you can't through effort, make yourself alert enough, it's either there or it isn't there. In your case, it's there because you're here. That is a clear sign that enough presence is there for you to meet the pain body with alertness and watch it. If possible, the moment it arises as an enormous energy impulse. And to watch that. Maybe you can't stop it yet, you don't need to stop it. Just watch as it, if possible, catch it before it becomes a thought. Catch it on the energetic level just as it begins to move into your mind. Now that is easier to do with certain pain bodies than with others. If your pain body's frequency is predominantly heavy, enormous heaviness and density, so when it takes you over, you go slow and heavy thought processes about how dreadful everything is, just completely pointless and dreadful, and the whole world is just dreadful. Now those are easier to catch because they arise more slowly. Oh, there it is. And then there are other pain bodies that contain a great deal of fire, anger, and they come, and that's very hard to catch them because there's virtually no gap. They arise as an energy phenomenon, but before you know it's an energy phenomenon, it's already become a thought and you're shouting at somebody. Or if nobody is around, you're shouting in your head. And so the pain body has already taken over your mind. And so the most difficult one to catch is if it's predominantly angry. And you may not be able to catch because the gap between seeing the pain body as an energy phenomenon and it becoming a thought and thereby a me, a self, the gap is too short or almost non-existent. In that case, all you can hope for is that in the middle of that, somewhere, an observing presence watches you in motion. And so from underneath the pain body there is a witnessing presence. But it may not happen yet. It may be that you wait until it's subsided, and then very quickly the awareness is there and you suddenly realized that was the pain body. There it was, it just been feeding on my mind and on this situation. And the more consciousness there is, the sooner you wake up after it has subsided. You can wake up as the anger subsides. There is sometimes a gap when the energy field goes down, the pain body begins to leave your mind, begins to withdraw because it's been feeding enough. It begins to withdraw from your mind, and there, at this point when it begins to withdraw, you can sense it as an energy field. Okay. You haven't failed. You're there now. At any time you are there as the presence, it's fine. With now other pain bodies you can catch as they arise as an energy phenomenon. There it is. And you watch it, you allow it to be. This is the key. You allow it to be. You cannot fight it. The key is even here, to bring in the yes, because it is. It is. What can you do? It's right here. It is. It is the suchness of this moment. And so, you embrace it. If that's all you can, that implies that there is a witnessing presence. So you embrace it, you allow it to be, and the amazing thing is when you begin to realize that there can be, even in the case of the pain body, there can be a spaciousness around it. Even in the case of an angry pain body, which fumes and shouts, and suddenly you know it, and allow that to be there, there's suddenly a little bit of space around it. Freedom arises when you see the non-personal nature of the pain body. When you see the non-personal nature of the emotional pain, ultimately, although anger doesn't recognize itself as pain, you see the non-personal nature of all those energy movements that we call pain body movements. They are recognized as human pain. They only become personal when they amplify and energize a story in my head that is my story, and that is me, and that is the fictitious self. That is the delusion that it is a personal matter. And you suddenly, when you allow the pain body to be there as an energy phenomenon, it's no longer a personal matter. And you realize it's very similar in every other person. It's basically the same. Anger is anger, human anger. Fear is fear, human fear. And sadness, the heaviness of depression, is the sadness and the heaviness of human sadness. There is no person there. And so it's an enormous liberation to see that this is not me, it's not who I am, it's not me, it's human pain flowing through me. It's the human condition. And here it is. And what can you do with the human condition, which is the condition of the unsurrendered consciousness for a million years? You bring surrender to that. The human pain body